Oh, and good evening, and welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation podcast live, where I'm joined tonight by two people. Obviously, my co-host Victoria and Scott as well. Victoria, how are you doing? How's your day going?
My day's going good. It is very, very hot here in Canada, so I decided not to wear my Rangers shirt because I was absolutely roasting. But I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to meet Scott virtually for the first time and hear a little bit about what he's been up to as well. How about you, Owen? How's your day going?
Yeah, good. Work this morning and just been running around looking after the kids and sorting everything out and so on and so forth.
Oh, busy,
Scott,
busy.
welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation. Great to have you on the podcast. How's your day been? How's it been going, Scott?
Yeah, very good. Thank you very much for the invitation to you both. I'm looking forward to being on. It's been very wet up here. It's been actually pretty good to see a bit of rain because it's been roasting for a long time. And I don't know about other people, but I'm not a massive fan of the heat sometimes, especially when you get it for so long. So to have a wee bit of rain, I think is pretty good. Yeah, but it's a pleasure to be on, guys.
Yeah, it's great. And obviously, we're looking forward to finding out a little bit about your Rangers story and also finding out about your exciting new venture as well. So let's just say hello to a few people in the live chat this evening. We've got Aldo, the Sniper McNaught, my good buddy, one of my mods. We've got Nicholas Moore as well, obviously another one of our mods. But also thank you as well to Dean Henderson, a new channel member. Remember, you can become a member of the channel for as little as 99p, less than a cup of cheap McDonald's coffee, and other coffees are, of course, available. Robert as well is in the live chat. Good evening, Robert. Glad to have you on board. And if you've got any thoughts, comments, questions throughout the podcast, please make sure you drop them in in the live chat, and we'll get to you as soon as we can. So, thank you so much. So, Scott, we're going to talk about your Rangers story first, and then we're obviously going to get on to talk about your new venture. I know Victoria's got a couple of questions just to start us all off with.
I do. So let's start with your Rangers story. We've all talked about like how we started following Rangers and how that love really grew. So how did that work for you? Was this something you were born into, like some of us, like myself, for example, or did you choose to become a Rangers supporter over time?
It was something I was born into. I come from a long line of Rangers fans. My dad, actually, this is a little known fact. Actually, my dad was actually a member of the Rangers youth team in 1986, just before Graham Souness took over. He played in the same youth team as one Gordon Ramsay. So
Wow.
I've got that wee kind of that's a wee kind of insider fact for people that some people probably won't know that, but I do tell a lot of people. Yeah, so I kind of look from there. Like, it obviously when kind of Souness came in, one of the first thing he did was he kind of cut a lot of the youth teams, so he didn't really kind of get by that stage. But yeah, I just grew up in it. Obviously, come from a kind of Rangers background. Just when I was growing up, my dad obviously big Rangers fan. Got a lot of quite a close family members who are Rangers fans as well. They obviously from there kind of ended up getting into it myself. I was born in 1996, so I was told when I was young just how good the 9 in a row times were. The first kind of early memories I have were kind of Celtic dominating under Martin O'Neill. My first season I really remember up close was 02-03. That was the first year I got a season ticket in the club deck. And that was a treble winning season, obviously one of my earliest memories. And I'm 7 years old, but I can still remember this like it was yesterday. The 6-1 game against Dunfermline where Arteta scored the last minute penalty. That was probably say that was one of my favourite days as a Rangers fan. That's one of my earliest memories. But just from there, had a season ticket from that season up until the second season of Gerrard's. And then just from there, just obviously been through a lot as a Rangers fan, as we all have. We've had our ups and downs. But yeah, just a magnificent club. It just really is. And I think it's a bond with a lot of people over Rangers. Obviously, we've been through the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, but it's been it has been a total journey. But yeah, it's been something I was born into from the start. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And yeah, you're right. There's so many highs and so many different types of lows. And it's true what they say, like we are the Rangers family. So no matter where we are at, if we're at the lowest of lows, we'll continue to follow Rangers until the highest of highs. So talking about players, because you happened to mention your dad on the youth team, got a chance to play with Gordon Ramsay, which is absolutely fantastic. So jealous of that, by the way. Hopefully he got some good cooking recipes as well. But
I
who would
think it
you
was a bit
say is
volatile.
yeah, exactly. Who would you say is your, let's say, all-time favorite player of the past, and then your player that you're really looking at right now in the present time? So we got two of them. Who would you say?
Right. Okay. So when I was kind of growing up, the one player that stood out to me was always Barry. Ferguson. He was always the one to me. Like, he was the first. Funny story as well. The first shirt. I'd got a couple of shirts. I think I got Arthur Newman in the back of one, but the first shirt, there was a Rangers shop. I'm from Ayr. Some people might be listening to the podcast, maybe know Ayrshire, but there was a Rangers shop down at the bottom of Ayr High Street at the time, and I was able to go in and get my own Rangers shirt, and it was the 03-04 season. It was right after that treble win, and wanted to get Barry Ferguson in the back of my shirt. Loved him throughout that whole season. He was magnificent that season, and then bought the shirt, got the Ferguson 6 on the back, and then the next day it came through that he was going to Blackburn. So there's 8-year-old me with a Rangers shirt with Barry Ferguson 6 in the back, and he's away to Blackburn. So that was a bit of a. Barry Ferguson's always been the one, I would say, like guys like Ronald de Boer, Michael Moles, maybe later on, like Dado Pusso. There's a lot of guys I could mention. Recent years like Stephen Davis. There's a lot, but now I kind of judge. I'm kind of unfair. I judge a lot of people on. A lot of players on kind of old memories I've got, older ones. The one that's really caught my eye recently is, I know a lot of people say Todd Cantwell. I really like Nico Raskin. Like, I really think Raskin's the one. I would say he's going to be the player for me who's going to kind of define this Rangers team, because I think he fits so well in. And just, I know a lot of people say Cantwell because he's come into like he's completely changed. He's bringing goals in, but Raskin's just been a player Rangers have been missing for a long time. And I think he's one of those guys who can go on and he could play at a top level. I think he's similar to Ferguson in that regard. Like, when Ferguson left the first time, he could go on and play. He could have went to like Aston Man United, etc. Raskin could do similar to that. I think Raskin's that good. I think just a couple of more years at Rangers and he could go on. He could make Rangers a lot of money, and he could be one of the kind of standout players of this generation for Rangers. I don't think we've had that in a long time. Nacho's another one. Just guys, just wee kind of heroes as well. Davy Weir, Yelovich, remember been taken by him, but Raskin's the kind of one in that. I would say he's the one that reminds me of that kind of generation. He could be a top player who could just go on and be massive going forward.
Oh, I love that, and you're so right. I mean, those are the players that you really look out for. I feel like everyone is looking at Todd Cantwell right now, but definitely Raskin is one of those people that I think could do well this up and coming season. Maybe be the top goal scorer of the season. Who knows?
Absolutely, I gotta agree there with Scott. I think Raskin is a class act. He's absolute fun superstar. I mean, we've seen if you've been anybody who's been catching up with the under-21 performances that he's been putting in for Belgium, he's been one of the best players on the pitch, and pretty much owns some pretty talented players over the last few games. And I think as Aldo says in the live chat, unfortunately, I think he's a player we're only going to have for a couple of years. He's a player I think that will eventually go probably down south to the EPL, but we'll make an awful lot of money on him. An absolute shed load of money on him, because he is just an exceptionally talented player, a brilliant player. And I think he's someone who, I mean, if you can imagine as well, with that midfield next year, with possibly, I mean, Ryan Jack, Jose Cifuentes, if it's to be believed that he signs next week, and Nico Raskin as a 3 with Cantwell in front of them as part of any attacking move. That's a pretty scary looking midfield, isn't it, Scott?
Oh, certainly, yeah. I mean, the thing that I think the first thing Dale would have noticed is when he came in is that the midfield was really lacking in terms of from a forward production. Like, you had a lot of guys like Davis, Jack, Lundstram, Kamara. They all essentially do the same thing. They're all neat and tidy. They all can do it. You don't need 4 of them, but there's not a forward player. I didn't see anybody that was going to make forward runs. The first thing Beale does is bring in Raskin and Cantwell, when you've seen an immediate improvement in that regard. Like, Cantwell making a lot of good runs into boxes. Raskin is just his first thought is get the ball forward, makes nice passes. Kieran Dowell could be another one who could fit into that thing. I think Kieran Dowell could be going under the radar as one of the best signings of the summer. I really think that. I think he's got so much potential. I think he's maybe been another one who's just lost his way a wee bit in England. Coming up here will do him no harm. And I just think Cifuentes, it seems to be dragging on a bit, but I do think it'll eventually get done. I think there's more LAFC are holding that up, but I think once that's done, I do think we'll see a new look in the midfield. I think we'll see more forward attacking threats. I think that's the thing that Rangers have been missing, and just a new look midfield. I think the whole team needs to be new look, but I think midfield's half the time where you need to win your games, and having a midfield that's consistent and can do the both sides of the game well, I think is massive.
Absolutely. Just a comment before we move on to talk about the Rangers assessment, Scott. Quick comment in the live chat here. I'm going to pull up at Jay Walker. I think it's actually Tam. I think he's using his son's tablet, from what I remember from past podcasts. Bailey Rice can be the next Baz Ferguson. Would you agree with that, Scott? I mean, Bailey Rice looks a class act, doesn't he? He looks an absolute class act. I mean, I remember watching the Glasgow Cup final, and he just stood out. And then he had that performance for Scotland for the underage, and he looked brilliant in that. And then he had made his professional debut at Livy, and even at 16, he never looked out of place, which for a 16-year-old lad is just amazing. But what's your take on Bailey Rice, Scott?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I spoke to a couple of people when he was at Livingston, and they were about him, and they were raving about him, saying that he could get into the first team there right now. It's just they've been careful with him. He's come into Rangers, and kind of covering the Lowland League. I've seen a lot of him. I've seen a lot of Rangers youth games, and he has been the standout. And I think he's one of those guys where you can tell right away he's got an old head, which I think you really need to be a Rangers midfielder. I think that's why Ferguson did so well in his early spell. That if you're mature enough, you're old enough. And I think he will be a guy he will be one of the kind of youth players who kick on and be a big part of that Rangers team going forward. I think even this season, I was actually quite surprised we didn't see a lot of him towards the end of last season when there was not a lot happening. Maybe a perfect time to get him in for a few games. I think he maybe came on as a sub once, but it was a perfect chance to get him in. But I think he could be a guy that's got the world at his feet. I really do. I think you'll maybe see him a lot, kind of youth games, kind of whatever Rangers are deciding to do with a youth team. I don't know. I think that's one of the big questions of the summer where Rangers go for here in terms of withdrawing from the Lowland League. But I could get a whole other story about that. But I think right now you've got guys like Bailey Rice and Zach Lovelace who could go on and be quite big players for Rangers.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100% agree with you. Zach Lovelace is another one who's a class act, and Bailey Rice looks like a different gravy, doesn't he? He really does. Victoria, have you seen any of Bailey Rice? Have you got any opinions on Bailey and his future? And would you like to see him next season?
I haven't seen a whole lot of him, but I've just heard comments from other people that he could be quite good for Rangers. So until I see more of what he does, I'm going to have to withhold my comment on that one, because I'm more of like a seeing person instead of judging by what other people think, because everyone has favorites, right?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, I think he is someone who's going to come through and make a real difference for Rangers in the coming years. And I think we just got to remember that the kid's I think he's only just turned 17, and I mean, what an incredible story. An incredible story. So, Scott, you're obviously starting this new venture, Rangers Assessment. We've got the Twitter. If anybody's on Twitter, the Twitter for Rangers Assessment is on there at the bottom. Please give Scott a follow on there, and also SM Media Entertainment, who run Rangers Assessment. Scott, what is Rangers Assessment? Where can we find it? And what are you going to be doing on there? What is the purpose of your channel, and what sort of content will we find?
I think that's the first time somebody's actually asked that, and I'm kind of thinking, is there a proper plan? But yeah, there is. I mean, obviously, like, we've been running SM Media for a long time, and we cover a lot of Scottish football. Like, we do a weekly Scottish football podcast. We do a lot in terms of like Scottish non-league, kind of promoting that. We do a lot in the women's game, but the plan was always to go down the route of you've got two massive clubs in Scotland, and they both have a large following, and covering a certain level of Scottish football, it was hard to kind of tap into that. So it was always a plan down the line to have the two specific channels. So obviously the Rangers side, it's going to be called the Rangers Assessment. We're going to have a weekly Rangers podcast. Obviously there's a lot of Rangers podcasts and they all do amazing jobs, but there's no harm in having one more, and hopefully we get as good a following as you guys. But it's going to be like a weekly podcast. It's probably going to go out on a Monday morning. We're going to have daily articles. We've got a few really good writers can express their interest in coming on and helping out with that. I'm going to try my best to write as much as I can as well. We're going to have daily content. We're going to try and get interviews. We're going to cover obviously the men's game, women's game. There's obviously a lot of youth games as well. So there's a lot to do. Daily opinion articles. There's a lot to. With Rangers, as we see today, it's been quite quiet for the past few days, and then you've got a Sunday where just everything seems to happen. So again, just having daily content. It's always busy, and there's always going to be stuff going on. I mean, we're going to have, it's going to be on Twitter. We're obviously going to have a Twitter channel, YouTube. It's going to be on as part of the SM Media channels and YouTube. We're going to have it on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, something I want to explore into. I've not really used TikTok as well as others have. I like being on it, but I've never really expressed the kind of doing my own videos on it, but that's something we're going to certainly kind of look into going forward. But yeah, it's going to be daily content. We've got a few articles lined up. We're going to have like tactical pieces as well. It's something that I never really do in my other channel, SM Media. We don't really look at tactical analysis. It's something I always like to focus on. It's just something I've never really been able to get into with particularly Rangers as well. Transfer news is always constant. You've got a lot of stuff going on. History, I love looking back at old kind of memories of the club, doing wee pieces about them. So there is going to be a lot, and there's going to be daily content. And I urge anyone, if you want to explore more Rangers content, then please follow us.
You can never, you know what, Scott, and I'm sure Victoria will agree with me here. You can never get enough Rangers content. You know, keep you going on a daily basis. I mean, I think what's crazy is even though we're in the summer now, and obviously there's no football, there's just 24/7, isn't it? And everybody's, I think, well, I don't know about you, Scott. One of the first things I was doing in the morning, wake up right quickly, right, Rangers FC, what's happening? Lunchtime, what's happening? End of the day, what's happening? And keeping on top of it, isn't it? So it's a big thing. Now, you've talked obviously about your YouTube channel. When does the actual Rangers Assessment YouTube channel launch?
It's probably going to be at the time. I think the original plan is to kind of have it all under one YouTube channel. That's the plan at the moment. We're going to have, like, you might see our kind of old stuff, like we do, like we rank every Rangers manager from 1872 to now. We're going to have that hopefully going out as videos as well. So we're going to have it all under the one kind of channel, just because I think if you have too many YouTube channels, I think people will get quite confused. But it's all going to be part of under the one roof, just to kind of help the channel grow. I think you can have as many Twitters as you want, but having one YouTube channel, I think, is always a good idea. And there's a lot of stuff going to be going out daily on that. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot more. It's not just going to be a case of a podcast every week. There's plenty to tap into in terms of interviews. That's my original passion is interviews. So I've already got a couple kind of lined up to hopefully go out by the launch date, which is the 17th of July. One for the women's game, one for the men's game, kind of all players. So it's going to be possible to look in. There's a lot going out. It's every day. I'm kind of trying to get the ball rolling in terms of putting content out, and having a lot ready for launch. People have asked, like, what's happening. That's basically that. It's just that we're getting everything ready just to get out in the 1 week and then take it from there. And with a lot of positive feedback, obviously, it's a real pleasure to come on and speak to people like the both of you, obviously, who's doing a really good job in terms of Rangers content creation as well. So there's a lot of great fan media outlets as well. And that's something I've always been keen on to explore. That's why I get into what I'm doing in the first place. Is we should have an opportunity. You shouldn't need a degree to talk about your football team and talk about, like, do you know what I mean, right, about who you support and what you do. You should be able to just go on and do it. And we've got so many good platforms and so many really good people who, I mean, everybody, like every Rangers fans, if they want to come on and talk about Rangers, then they're more than welcome. And that's just the way it should be. I always think anybody who's got an opinion should be able to express it, and there's plenty of avenues now to go down that route.
So 100%, and I think, actually, you can never get enough Rangers content. And what amazes me, and I think it just shows the worldwide appeal of Rangers, is that all the Rangers podcasts, the really good quality ones, they've got thousands and thousands of subscribers, and it just shows what an absolutely massive worldwide club we are. And Barcelona have that saying that they're Més que un club, which means more than a club. But I think that's something you could equally apply to Rangers. It is more than a club, isn't it? It's a way of life, Scott, isn't it? An absolute way of life. Yeah,
and that was one of the things. Like I've always been keen to look at. I actually did my dissertation at uni on the Rangers situation in 2012 onwards, and kind of from that, I thought, right, when the first time, because this was always a plan to kind of get into to kind of do my own channel, and I said, right, I really want to do a documentary series on that, from what led to what happened in 2012 and how did Rangers come out to go and win the league 9 years later in 2021, and done the podcast, get some brilliant people to come on it with me, and kind of from there it exploded. I had many people viewing it, many people checking it out, and And from there, we were like, yeah, we could explore that into kind of doing our own Rangers channel. It was always the plan, because I think you've got as you rightly point out, a massive fan base that you can explore. A lot of people, as you say, you can never have enough content. There's a lot out there. And there's a lot of people that as well who really want to just talk about their football club, and they should always be allowed that. And I know I keep saying that, but it's true. And yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I always say from 2012 onwards, that it brought a lot of Rangers fans together. A lot of Rangers fans who disagree about how many goals the striker scored, and it doesn't matter. That was a point where every single Rangers fan needed to stick together, and that's one thing we saw from them. As every single kind of Rangers fan I know, they've all been able to go through this one thing together, and they've come out the other end in a much better position. They've had so many great memories after that. So there's a lot out there, and obviously with the introduction, all the kind of amazing content avenues we have now, there's many ways you can view it, check it out, and as I say, let's add one more to the mix.
Absolutely,
I think that's so good.
You can never have enough. Absolutely.
No, you're so right. I think content creating is
Victoria. Yeah. I mean, sorry, Victoria.
I cut you off.
No, you carry on, Victoria. Sorry.
I was going to say, so obviously you talked about all the content creating. There's so much of it out there nowadays. I mean, everything from like small, like short videos to the longer videos that you can do on YouTube. You can do the lives, you can do TikToks, there's Twitter, Facebook, and there's so much more coming that we don't even know about just yet that will just create this social media to be absolutely huge. So what first got you interested in doing content creating and social media and really exploring this huge avenue that our world really seems to be going in for everything?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like when I was leaving school, I was very similar to a lot of people. I was like, what am I going to actually do in my life? Like, I don't really have, like, I didn't really take school as seriously as I probably should have. And from there, I was like, oh, what do I do? But I'd always had my nickname at school, my nickname when I was growing up was Stato, because I couldn't tell you what had happened. I couldn't tell you what an algebra equation was, but I could tell you who was in 7th place in the Indonesian league, kind of thing. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I've always had an interest in sport. Like, Owen, before we were on the hour, talking about NFL. Like, I would, every single sport, like that's always been the avenue to go down, is to cover every single sport, because I really could. Like, I keep up to date as much as I can. So that was always, and I don't think there's enough. I don't think there's enough, like particularly in Scotland, like the kind of mainstream side. I don't think there's enough opportunities for people. Like, you have to. I mean, a lot of my friends, I know a lot of people who work in the mainstream media, and they're all really good. And there's a lot of guys in there who are brilliant. And I think sometimes the mainstream does get a bit of a bad rap, but there are some really good guys in it. But what they have to go through to get into that sort of position is crazy. Like, they have to go through so much in terms of uni and runners and editors and things like that before they get to a position where they can write a piece. Do you know what I mean? And now, obviously, with the advent of social media and like YouTube, for example, there's perfect opportunities. There's perfect opportunities now for people. So now you've got a way like YouTube. I can go on and do a 700-word article in WordPress in 20 minutes and then have it out an hour later. You usually, if you're working for a paper, for example, you probably have to put it through 10 people before you get anywhere close to being public. So there is plenty of opportunities now. So there's a lot more avenues to go down. So from now, like, that's always what I say. Like, when I started SM Media, it was always, I'll do what I can, I'll do what I can. But there's plenty of opportunities for other people. So, like, if you want to come on and write an article about how things are in football, just do that. And you know what I mean? There's an avenue we can provide a platform, and from there, I think there's a lot of things now you can do. Like, when I started, TikTok wasn't even a thing. Like, and now when I started podcasting, nobody really heard of them. Like, I remember doing a podcast and saying to somebody I was at uni with, like, "Oh, we're starting a podcast," and like, "What's a podcast?" And now 2 years later, they've got a podcast. So it shows you now just how much that avenue's changed, and there is so many avenues you can go down now. So it's brilliant.
Yeah, no, you're so right there. And then obviously you have the Rangers assessment coming up, which is super exciting. You said basically, like, maybe you weren't the best in certain subjects in school, but you could recall players that were playing in a different country and you knew different stats about them. Is that what made you create the Rangers assessment? Is because this is a really strong point for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's something like I know everything about it. Well, I know that I know everything about it. That's incredibly arrogant, but I know there's a lot of stuff like I really like the history of the club. Like I think like reading letters. I know a few guys who have put books out in the past couple of years. Like they do so well, but we have that kind of information now, and putting it out the way it is. It's so good now to have that, and it was always a plan to go down the setting up a Rangers only channel, a Rangers channel for Rangers fans. But I don't think there's many Rangers. I don't think there's many kind of proper channels in the way of they do daily content. Like Rangers Reviews one, Heart and Hand one. There's a lot of good Rangers daily content, but like there can never be enough, and it's good to have that. And as I say, that you can talk about transfers, you can talk about tactical analysis, you can talk about what's going on in the boardroom. You can talk. There's a lot. There's never a dull moment at Rangers. I mean, one day there could be very little happening, and they'll announce the museum's opening, kind of thing. Like there's always stuff to talk about. So now it's a perfect chance. I think now I've got a bit more. This was always the plan. It's been a bit delayed for personal reasons, but now I'm in a stage where I can do it and can spend a lot of time putting everything into it. So I'm hoping it can take off the way that I'm hoping it can, and I think it will. So here's hoping that it does. And I know there's a lot of people already really interested, and we've got some terrific writers lined up. We've got terrific interviews lined up. So here's hoping it takes off the way we're planning it to.
Yeah, and I'm sure it will. I mean, Owen and I are firm believers that if you put in hard work and you truly believe that something can work, it's going to happen. You're going to make it happen. And that goes through absolutely anything in life. So you spoke about different content that do, like Owen, he posts his daily videos up there. We do the live streams and stuff like that on certain days. There's different interviews. Is this something you're going to think about doing as well as more daily content, or are you going to have more fixed days that you're going to be uploading for your viewers to tune into?
I think it's like anything. It depends just how quickly it goes. Like as we say, like there was stuff that would be planned for today, and then you get news about certain players not coming in and certain players coming in, and you need to change everything. So we'll always have something planned to go on a daily basis. It's just obviously it could change just when there's a bit of news, but there's always going to be something coming out every day. Yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah, perfect.
That's the best way forward. I know that's one of the biggest things that I learned. I work with a brilliant guy called Grid. That's not his real name, but that's the name he goes by. And he has a channel that talks about Detroit Lions, and he has like 66,000 subscribers. It's huge. And it's one of the things he always told me was, if you want your channel to grow, you have to put out daily content and always keep your name in the forefront of people's people when they want to see content. And that's just fantastic. So I think, Scott, one thing you mentioned was TikTok. One thing you'll do if you ever do TikTok lives, which I've done a couple of myself, you will suddenly find out how obsessed that lot from across the city are with us, because you will get so many of them coming on and making, shall we say, helpful comments.
Yeah, I mean, I better be careful what I say, because we're launching a Celtic channel as well. So we're going to launch two different. We're going to have a lot of different people, obviously working for different avenues. So I better be careful what I say. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, for example, you see a lot of things about, like today, Rangers are signing a player in loan, and I saw 30 comments with Celtic fans before I saw a Rangers fan commenting. So yeah, there is that. But you're going to see there's a fun bit to it. I know a lot of people do it for a bit of fun, but again, it does become tiresome. But I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting. I mean, both sides I think are going to be really weird this summer, because both sides are going to be a bit of a transition. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I mean, I enjoy sometimes the occasion of it, and the rivalry. I think at times it gets a bit ridiculous, but at times I think it's funny. I do. I sometimes just sit back and let it happen. So I would play that. I would just be quite keen. I'd just be quite keen. Like sometimes if it just stuck to a bit of a laugh instead of the way it goes. Like sometimes I think it's a bit ridiculous, but other times I just sit back and think, yeah, that's quite entertaining. Let's just play that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, guys, you've heard loads about the Rangers assessments. Obviously, when it launches, guys, please check it out. Subscribe to the channel. So, check out Scott's content. He sounds absolutely fantastic. Scott, we're going to move on a little bit now. Obviously, talk a little bit about Rangers so far this off season. And what's your opinion of the off season so far for the club? I mean, it seems to be happening fairly quickly. Everything, the rebuild. But what's your take on it all?
Yeah, I mean, it started off really quick. You had 3 signings within a week, and then it went quiet for a while, and then it seems to have kicked off again today. I like the signing so far. I like Kieran, as I said earlier. Really like the look of Kieran Dowell. I think he's been a player he was really good at Everton when he first broke in. Then he lost his way a wee bit. He's went to Norwich and never really kicked on. Could be a similar mould to Cantwell. I think it's a good piece of business getting him a pre-contract. Dujon Sterling's a young player. Do you know what I mean? He's a young 20. I think he's only 22, 23. Coming in from Chelsea, he's got a good pedigree. Done really well at Stoke, I was hearing. So yeah, another good bit of business, and has that versatility in defence that I think Rangers have lacked for a while. I think he could be another one that could be kind of used in all different areas of the back line. Jack Butland, I think we all know that Rangers have needed a goalkeeper for at least 2 years. I mean, this time last year I was pretty vocal about how I felt about the goalkeeping situation, and I thought it'd get kicked into the long grass. So now to have a new goalkeeper, to have a new number one, feel a wee bit for Robin McCrory, because I think he done himself no harm in making the number one jersey his own for a while. But I think Jack Butland is the right type of guy, fits the bill, relatively young. So relatively young in terms of a goalkeeper. He's still only 30. He's another one that's lost his way. In the Sam Lammers signing, I think I can see why people are kind of cautious about his goal record, but I've watched a lot of Dutch football where his probably best spell was. He was at PSV, done really well, got a big move to Atalanta in Italy. And he's just another guy who's just kind of hasn't really kicked on for that. And I think one thing we can all agree on is that Michael Beale seems to be plucking some players out and who've done really well a couple of years ago and just never really kicked on. And we've seen with Cantwell. I mean, if all of them turn out to be like Cantwell, then I think Rangers have got a few good players in their hands. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of the business. I agree with the thing that there's a lot of players needing moved on. There's a lot of deadwood there who should have been let go a couple of seasons ago when they were at peak value. But also, I think you're seeing there's definitely interest on a lot of players like that was Kamara. I think there's a lot of interest in Čolak. I know there's interest in from Germany. And there's also like guys like Wright, like a couple of guys who you don't really see a future for. But I know Kamara. I think Kamara's an absolute certainty to be away in the summer, to be honest. But there's a lot of guys I don't think we'll see anywhere near the level of. You'll see maybe 10 in, 10 out, I would imagine. In terms of, obviously, you've seen 5 leave already. Davis, I think, will be another one Ben Davis, I think, will be definitely one that will be getting looked at from elsewhere. Stephen Davis won't be used as much. Obviously, he's come back from an injury. I don't see him playing much anymore. So you're going to have a big rebuild. I think, like the past couple of weeks, there's a lot of talk about players coming in, but nothing really seems to be happening. There's no real progression seems to be getting made. My thoughts are, what I've heard is that that's going to change in the next week or so. There's a few targets that are being kind of pushed through a wee bit. Cifuentes, I'm sure we'll touch on in a couple of minutes. That seems to be a case of the 4th of July when the MLS, the 6-month period ends, they will be able to get that deal done with LAFC. So we're going to have a lot of news in the next week or so. And obviously today we heard about the potential loanee from Brighton.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, one of the names, I mean, obviously the big thing everybody wants is strikers. And I know Sam Lammers has come in, but a lot of people say he's not an out-and-out 9. And I think you look at his play, he does seem more like that Bergkamp-esque player. But Cyril Dessers has been linked, and we've heard all the talk about Cremonese wanting 6.5 million. And a lot of it is, we've got to take all this media talk with a little bit of a pinch of salt. We know that. And Josh Madja is another one. So, looking at those stories, Scott, which one of those players would you rather see come in, or would you rather see both? And what's your opinion on Dessers? I mean, personally speaking, I don't rate the guy at all. I think 6.5 million is a no for me. Anything over 3 million, I think for him is just a huge no. I mean, feel free to disagree, but what's your take on that whole issue?
I kind of, I do know a wee bit about him. I wouldn't go out and limb and say I know that he's an out and out goal scorer. He's not. I think he's very similar in terms of what he does off the ball and kind of holding up play to Alfredo Morelos. I think that's why he's been targeted. Like he's not an out and out number 9 who's going to get you 30 goals a season. He might if he gets. I mean, he'll get more chances at Rangers than he certainly would at an Italian team sitting 19th in the league. But I think that's clear. He is good. Madger's one who will score you goals. He is more that kind of number 9, kind of fox in the box, as I always say. But the one that really catches my eye, and I don't know if there's any. I think we're all kind of aware there's potentially talk. Is the young kid from Sweden? I think his name. Is it? I can't remember his name. Somebody can tell me in the comments. But there's a bid for a player in Sweden, Haken, the club. He seems to be a good. I think the one thing that we all agree on is that Rangers last season, if Rangers had a forward line similar to Celtics, they would have probably won at least one trophy last season. Rangers' big struggle last season was scoring goals in big games. They didn't do it. They couldn't do it. They missed a lot of chances. They were. I mean, I think Rangers' top goal scorer last season was Tavernier, and then I think Cantwell had better. There was a thing I saw last season. Benny Traore, that's the guy's name. There's a lot of Rangers strikers last season who had nowhere near the levels of stats like maybe a Cantwell did, for example, coming in. That's not good enough. Rangers need players. Rangers need a lot of goal threats as well. That's where the first thing that needs done is the forward line. That's why when people were saying about Malik Tillman coming in, I could absolutely understand why you would spend $5 million on a player who one day is going to be worth 5 times that if the development's right and we can see there's a player there. But also, Rangers need to win now. Rangers can't afford right now to have a 2-year project in Malik Tillman, who I really like. I think he's going to be a terrific player. I think we're all going to be quite glad that he's been a Rangers player over the years. But right now, I don't think that's the avenue Rangers need to go down. Rangers need to spend, if they're going to spend £10-15 million, it needs to be on out and out goal scorers. It needs to be on forwards who can deliver better stats than the likes of that's why Ryan Kent infuriated me so much, because he should be doing so much more, and he just didn't. It just didn't provide the stats that you need for a player of that calibre. Morelos the same. Morelos on his day 2 or 3 years ago could score a lot of goals, but right now, this season he was nowhere near the level we needed to be, and I think Rangers struggle with that. So I think Lammers is the first of that. I think you'll maybe see. I'll be surprised if Rangers don't spend £10-15 million in a complete new forward line. They've already spent kind of 2.5 in Lammers. Dessers, I don't know. I don't know if he's necessarily going to be that guy who's going to score 25 goals, but I think he's got a lot of good qualities that would suit a Rangers team. It depends what you want to do with your forward line. If you're last season, I think we saw Beale try towards the end of the season 2 up front, whether he's going to try Lammers and Dessers or somebody else, or if he's going to try a 4-3-3 again and bring in 2 wide players. Rangers don't have a right winger. They've not had a right winger in 5-10 years. Obviously, they need to replace Ryan Kent, and they not only need to replace Ryan Kent, they need to get somebody who can deliver more numbers than Ryan Kent. So there's a lot to think about, but I think right now you've got Lammers in, who's going to be that kind of all-rounder in the forward line. You need at least 2 goal scorers. I don't think Čolak will be there. I don't think Beale particularly fancies him, to be honest. I think if Beale fancied him, we wouldn't really be having this conversation about a new striker. I like Sakala. I can see the positives in Sakala, but at times it frustrates the life out of me. You need a better version of Fashion Sakala. You need a starter and then Sakala as your backup. And you need a completely left-sided winger. So you need at least, I would say, 4 new forwards right now. 4 new forwards, two strikers, one that can do the Morelos side of it, and a kind of lethal goal scorer. I'm very much a believer of Rangers always do well when they've got a partnership like a McCoist and Haley. McCoist who would score goals, Haley who would do the work. Boyd would score goals, Miller would do the work. Rangers, you still need to do that. So I think you need an out-and-out goal scorer, and I think you need a worker in your 2 forwards.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And you know what? You mentioned something great there about how Morelos back in the day, he was that goal scorer that we all looked at. And then it seems like he's like kind of disintegrated, like especially last season. And I don't know about you, but you could see the frustration in his face when he wouldn't get those goals. And I don't know what was going on behind the scenes, but I don't know if he wasn't in it to win it like the rest of us were, but it wasn't there. But we are quite lucky to have quite a few rumored players coming through the door. Hopefully I don't butcher this name again, but Cifuentes. We can never get easy names like Smith, John, whatever. So I'm thinking that Cifuentes might be some of the next to come through the door. It definitely seems like one of those rumors that isn't becoming as big of a rumor anymore. So if I were to ask you, who do you think the next player coming through the door is? Who would you say?
If you asked me this time yesterday, I would have probably said Cifuentes, but now it seems to be I keep forgetting people's names. It's the kid from Brighton who seems to be a lot closer than anything at the moment. I think the big delay with Cifuentes is LAFC. Now he's put out, if you look at his Instagram, he's sent out 2 goodbye messages at LAFC, and then last night he's back in the team. So there's some sort of weirdness going on there. I do think that'll get done. I think it's just a case of agreeing a fee. I think I'm right in saying the MLS, his contract's up at the end of December, and I think from 1st of July he's got a freedom to speak to anybody. So I think you'll maybe see in the 1st of July, LAFC will just want to get a small amount of money for him. So you will probably see that getting done at the beginning of the month. I do think the kid, I keep forgetting his name, and I've been reading things about him all day, but the kid from Brighton to me looks done. I think that's pretty much agreed. I think it's just a case of a medical, and I think it's agreed with Brighton. I think he's going to be joining towards the beginning of the week. So that seems to be a very interesting one. I think it's one that obviously Bill will maybe know him about when he was at Slavia Prague. Obviously played in that infamous game at Ibrox with the Kamara situation, but he was good that night, stood out. He didn't really have a good spell in France, but I know a lot of people at Brighton seem to rave about him, and I don't think he's at Premier League level yet. I don't think he's going to go into the Brighton team, but to me, a deal for a player who was worth £7 million 2 years ago, to get him in a season-long loan is an absolute no-brainer. So I think that's one that will go down. Cifuentes ticks a lot of boxes for me because I know a lot about the MLS. I watch the MLS quite a lot. He's been a standout for me. He's very similar in terms of what Celtic have with Hatate. Like he's that type of player, and Rangers have not had that for a while. He's a box to box. He'll do a lot of stuff in both sides of the park, what Rangers really need, and he could complement Raskin and Cantwell really well. And to me, that's another one that looks a no-brainer. I think that's a matter of time before it gets done. Dessers, I think the hold-up is I don't think there's anywhere close to a fee being agreed. Cremonese are holding out for what they paid last season, which I think was about 6.5. Rangers won't pay that for him. That's why it's been held up. So whether Rangers look elsewhere or there's a compromise done, I don't know. But that one seems to be dragging on a bit. There's a few kind of dragging on as well. The Cifuentes, if you would say to me who's the next one, I would say it's probably Sima from Brighton, then Cifuentes. They're my 2 that I would say are probably the next 2 to get done.
Yeah, hopefully you're right.
Sorry, knocked the me on there. Yeah, Panzo is another one I think who is very highly rumoured as a possible coming in at £2.5 million fee, and plus obviously that Ross Wilson being the sporting director at Forest kind of gives us a little bit of a head start hopefully on negotiations there. Now you kind of touched on Antonio Čolak earlier, Scott. Another guy who's taken up a lot of column inches, and another one who seems to, for me, divide the fan base right down the middle is Borna. Obviously Borna going into the last year of his contract. What do you think is the best way forward, Borna? Would you like to see Borna given a new deal, or do you think we need to sort of try and cash in on him this summer? I mean, personally, I don't think a left back is a priority. I think we keep hold of him for the season. If he does walk, he walks, or we give him perhaps an 18-month deal or something, a short-term deal. What's your take on the whole Borna situation?
I have 2 very different opinions on this. Now, if you'd said to me 3 years ago, I was raving to everybody that Borna Barišić is the best left back Rangers have had since Sasa Papac, and he was outstanding. He's another one. I think there's a lot of Rangers players who fit this description right now. They've stayed on too long. They've stayed on just far too long. I don't think I said the night that Celtic beat Rangers 3-0 and Barišić got absolutely slaughtered by Lula Bada, like absolutely murdered in the first half of that game. I turned to everybody and said, Borna Barišić should never pull on a Rangers shirt because he cannot play these games. He's not good. It's not that he's not good enough. It's just that he's not. He's run his course. You don't really recover from those types of doings, to be honest. And he got an absolute doing that night, and we've seen it a few times since. I remember he loses the exact same goal in the 4-0 game this last season under Gio, and it was the same goal. He's crouched down. He's just another. I think the problem with it is that he's a highly sellable asset. He's the left back for a team that's got to a World Cup final 5 years ago. They got to a semi-final last year. Do you know what I mean? There's very few Rangers players who've got that pedigree, but he's only got 12 months in his deal. So if you want to cash in on him, you're going to need to cash in on him now, and you're going to get nowhere near what he's worth. And he's worth a lot more than what Rangers will probably get for him. So do you sell him and just recoup some of the money you paid for him? Because they only paid $2 million, so I think you'll get that. But you could get so much more if he's tied down to a longer deal. But I think Rangers need to move on from Borna Barišić, because I don't think he's going to get any better. I think he's reached his apex at Ibrox. I think he's the same as a lot of guys, and I think Yilmaz is really. I think that's one of the best things that happened last season was the signing of Yilmaz. Now, it took time to get settled, but now that he's come in, he's got some games under his belt. He seems to be kind of getting more used to the surroundings and things like that. I think that was one. I think he was a bit homesick, and there's a lot more potential when you're playing Yilmaz than there is in Borna Barišić. So I would keep Borna Barišić. You've got Sterling, who can obviously play as a versatile left back. I think that's one of the big things, that if you go for another left-sided centre back, you could have somebody who could play as a left back as well if there's an emergency. So if you were asking me, I think cash in and Borna, get some of the money back for him. Can't defend. He can't really defend as well as he used to. I would say just it's part company, move on. Get Yilmaz in as a regular left back and have an understudy like Sterling who can contribute, and that's how I would do it. I think you've spent a lot of money in Yilmaz, so you have to play him or sell him. I really like Yilmaz. I think he's kicked on really well over the last few games of the season. I thought he was really good actually in the game against Celtic. I thought he was bombing up and down really well, and I think he's a player you can move on with. And I think if it was up to me, I think Borna Barisić's time at Ibrox is done.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of controversy around Borna there and what he's going to do, if he's actually good for us or if he's not, or if it is ready for him to move on. I see a lot of comments that I'm reading right now saying that it is time for him to move on. So we'll definitely see what happens. Another person that seems to be in that kind of controversy level sometimes is Antonio Čolak. What do you think of him?
I like him. I think he obviously was one of the highlights under Gio last season. He was scoring a lot of goals, but I think when Beale came in, he didn't really get much of a sniff. And I think Michael Beale's type of player is very different to Giovanni Van Bronckhorst's type of player, particularly in a forward area. So Čolak scored a lot of goals, kind of fed in a lot of scraps, but I think Michael Beale wants his strikers to do more. I think he wants them to be all-round strikers, and I think we can all agree. I don't think Antonio Čolak is the best at kind of holding the ball up, bringing kind of wingers into it, bringing midfielders in. So I think it's tough. Just from what I'm kind of hearing and kind of speaking to other people, I think he'll be gone in the summer, because he's got a good goal scoring record. They didn't pay a lot of money for him, so I think he'll be one who'll probably move on. But again, if it was up to me, I would keep him around, and he's one that I think will get you goals. But right now, I don't think he'll be there in the summer. After the summer, I really don't.
Oh, we're muted again with Owen.
Yeah, I'm trying to eliminate. I keep trying to eliminate the echoes. I'm muting. I keep forgetting to mute it. So I think Čolak is a good player, and I think he will score goals. And I think he scored 18. I think in total last season across all competitions. And I mean, considering he was injured for large portions of last season, that's a pretty decent return. Do you think that part of it, Scott, is the fact that he just doesn't suit this system? I mean, he was bought by Gio. For Gio's system, Michael Beale seems to want to play this split wide striker role, as we saw near the end of the season. Čolak's not that type of player, is he? Do you think it's just that he's not a Beale player and he's just unfortunate because of that?
Yeah, I think he's going to be one who's going to suffer for a change of manager. I don't think he does the job like Morelos does. I think when Beale came in after the World Cup, I think it was very telling that he went for Morelos straight away, because he'll know Morelos a bit better because he worked with him. But the way Gerrard played that way of you've obviously your two wingers kind of tuck in like Kent, and at the time it was Roof or Hadji, and Morelos was there to kind of bring them into the game. That's why you saw a lot of goals coming from Roof at the time in that 55 season. And Morelos at times could score goals. I've never ever thought Morelos was a good finisher. So that's one thing Čolak has always been better at, is finishing. Morelos has never been the best at it. But Morelos does so much more than just score goals. He's bringing players in. I think it was very interesting. The 4-0 Old Firm game at the start of the season, Čolak was horrendous. And it was because he was being asked to do a lot of stuff. He was going up against the likes of Carter Vickers and Starfelt, who were just kind of bossing him, to be honest, because he was uncomfortable what he was playing. He wasn't getting the chances that he would usually get. Rangers play Celtic. You're not going to get as many chances as you were against a team like kind of Kilmarnock or St Johnstone, where Čolak scored a lot of his goals at the start of the season. So it's different for him. I think with the way, obviously Europe, you're going to be guaranteed a European run from kind of August onwards anyway. So whether you get Champions League or Europa, I don't know, but you're going to have a lot of kind of not spare games, but you're going to have, like with the squad building, you're going to have a lot of different avenues to go down. Do you have like one set of players for the domestic and kind of keep some for European? I think that's why kind of a lot of teams are doing that now. Like, you've got to keep a lot of players for different avenues. Like, how many times when Morelos was playing in Europe, under Gerrard, would Defoe play the next weekend domestically? So you're going to need that. So that's where Čolak might come in if he stays. But if it was, I don't think I don't think Beale wants to build a forward line around Antonio Čolak. So to me, I think he'll get money back for him anyway, because I think he's always done really well wherever he's been. He's always scored goals, so you'll always be able to recoup your money for him. And Rangers, I don't think they paid $2 million for him. I think they just paid under that. So they'll be able to recoup that and put it on. I think they'll spend that on somebody who fits Beale's system more, Beale really likes. And I think you will see potentially a like-for-like replacement with Čolak, who's maybe a bit better in terms of holding the ball up and bringing others into the game. So I think you might see Čolak moving on and somebody else who fits the system a bit better coming in.
Absolutely. I think that may happen. And Werder Bremen are heavily linked with Čolak, and they look like losing their two strikers, Füllkrug and I think Dush, whatever he's called. I'm rubbish with names. Moving away from the playing side for a moment, Scott. Obviously, it seems like it's a massive summer of change at the club, not just on the playing side, but across the whole organisation. And I think personally, there seems to be a real drive to take the club into being a very modern 21st century forward-thinking club. James Bisgrove has come in as new CEO and technically hasn't actually started yet, but is, I think, kind of taken over anyway. What's your take on James and what he's done so far?
I mean, he's come in, obviously, he's had a very good background over the years. Like, he knows that Rangers need to be a modern day club. They need to move into the one thing you can look at in the past few years and say Rangers have been really good at is the commercial side of it. Look no further than the fact there's about 30 sponsors in the back of the programme anytime you read it. There was, before James Bisgrove goes in, there was 5, if that, and they were all the same guys from 10 years ago. So he's come in, he's brought a lot of commercial partners into the club. He seems to be a natural fit in terms of the modernising. I think we can all agree that Rangers in the past couple of years have stagnated, they've stood still. You're seeing over the summer there's a lot of change at the club, so Bisgrove's a perfect example. John Bennett, I think the thing that impresses me with both of them is that the first thing they kind of rectified was the lack of fan engagement. Like, I think there was very little in the way of informing the fans what was happening. We now see a fan forum every 3 months. I think that's a great way to go about things. All reports are the first one went down really well. There was a lot of things explained. And that's the first step of improvement, because I've always said that Rangers don't interact with their fans well. They don't. The past few years, I could go into a rant about the way they dealt with the media. I don't think it was good at all. I think that's been kind of sorted in the past couple of months. So that's good to see. And I just think there's an overall progression at the club in terms of fan engagement. I think fan engagement is always important, because I don't want to see Rangers fans protesting that they want the board out. I don't want to see that. The days for that are done. They should have been done years ago, when you actually had bad guys running the club. Now you've got, I think you had good guys there who just maybe weren't modern. I don't think they were up to what they were required of. So now you've got a guy like Bisgrove who knows how the 21st century football works. He knows how important it is to have your fans on board. He knows how important it is to have the likes of, like, for example, commercial deals, except for the disastrous idea of the Sydney thing. He's pretty much been flawless in his whole time at the club. So he's a perfect fit, and I don't think there's been too much change in that regard. Obviously the conversation, one of the big things that stood out was the potential appointment of a sporting director. I'll be surprised if that happens before the end of the window, because I think it would potentially be a bit damaging if you brought in a new sporting director and changed the whole plan that Beale clearly has. Let Beale operate for the summer, then potentially look at having Rangers will have an idea who they want, but I think appointing somebody right now would potentially be a problem. So down the line, it's certainly something you explore, but right now it seems to be a case of back the manager. Bennett and Bisgrove are doing what they need to do to kind of change what was kind of going wrong at the club for the past couple of years. And I think they're two guys who certainly know how the modern game works. And I think they're two guys I think that could be really good going forward. And I think they've certainly started well in that regard.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right, especially when you talked about the more modern stuff coming into Rangers, the different changes that are happening. You really feel like the people within Rangers understand it now. I mean, fans like you and I mean, we don't just look at Rangers like, okay, it's a team that we're going to watch on Saturday and then that's it. No, we invest our lives into it. We care truly, truly about the club and the success of the club. And I really feel right now, especially with the fan forum and stuff like that, that Rangers are listening to what the fans want. Because, I mean, in all honesty, without the fans, you don't have as big of a football club. And I know a lot of ex-players would also agree, because they're also appreciative of the fact that the fans really made them who they are today. And it's true, the fans make the football club. So now we have the fan forum, we have the museum that's opening, we have the bar that's being created from the old shop, we have restaurants that is in conjunction, of course, with Gordon Ramsay, which is very exciting, the new Edmondson House. So much going on within Rangers. Do you think this is something positive that's happening within Rangers, and basically there's a lot of communication with other fans that is being reciprocated?
Yeah, I think it definitely is. I think you've got obviously a lot of different avenues now of, like, as you mentioned, Edmondson House. Like, it certainly seems to be going down well, and it's good. It's a good avenue as well for, like, Rangers. I think they've rented out already to likes of like St Phoenix, Callum Beattie. I think there's a lot of kind of things lined up there for, like, that's more money for the club, and obviously restaurants as well. We need to see that there's more avenues than just getting 50,000 in. I think always, like, one of the things I'll always say when I was going to Rangers games, there was very little to do outside the ground before a game. Like, it was just a case of get off the bus, get out your car and go straight to your seat. You've got now places you can go to. Do you know what I mean? You can go to Edmondson House. I've always said there should be other avenues to go down when you're at the ground. So yeah, I mean, it can only be a good thing. I think it should have been done a long time ago. So now to see them do it is good. There was obviously talk of expanding Ibrox, which I think obviously is going to take a lot of money, but it's certainly something that will be a positive in the long run if they go down that route. Disabled access is something that really needs improved as well. So they certainly seem to be making the right strides with that. And there's a lot of things going on. I think there's never enough avenue to make money, especially at Rangers when you've got a lot of fans who pay. I mean, you saw, for example, Rangers put out a tweet on Thursday saying they're selling the shirt on Friday, and I was under the impression there was a crowd at Edmondson House on Friday. You've got a museum. I've said for a while about the museum. Rangers should have a museum whatever. I would love to take members of my family to a Rangers museum down the line. So to have that option is something I've always been vocal about, that needs to happen. So that's great how they're doing that. And there's just so many ways Rangers can make money, and Rangers, they are beginning to kind of move towards kind of making progress in that regard. So you can never have enough fan engagement. It's something that's been lacking for a while, and now I'm seeing a massive improvement already from what we saw a while ago. I'm seeing a lot of improvement in terms of fan engagement. I'm seeing a lot of improvement in terms of just the way the building of just around about Ibrox. There's a lot more to do, and I just want. I think they will be able to keep it going, and I just hope they do, because it's a lot of the plans are laid out are great.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I think the nice thing about the museum, and I know this is something that Owen and I have spoken before with, especially with certain people in Rangers, the nice thing about the museum is they're going to be switching things out. So every time that you should go, whether it's like every couple of months or something like that, maybe a family visiting every now and again, you're going to see new things within Rangers history, and not just things that you would regularly think about, like, oh, trophies, shirts. There's going to be special intricate details within there that not everybody would get to see. So that's something really, really exciting. It's going to be one of those changing museums, which is really, really nice, evolving the same way that Rangers is evolving.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, you're correct there, Victoria. And obviously when we had Colin Stewart on, he spoke about that, and really excited, obviously, for the museum opening. All right, guys, we're going to draw it together now as we come towards an hour on this podcast. Scott, so obviously, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for all your time. Scott, go for it. One last big plug for Rangers Assessment. Tell everybody why they should check it out, when they can check it out. Plug away, Scott, plug away.
So the 17th of July, we are going to be starting the Rangers Assessment, which is a new Rangers fan channel. It's going to have a lot of daily content. We're going to have a weekly Rangers podcast. Basically, any time after games, you're going to see a lot of post-match reaction, daily articles, daily columns. We're going to have a lot of kind of history stuff about the club as well. A lot of avenues to explore. Again, we're going to be doing like Twitter space and things like that. We're going to have TikToks. There's a lot going on at the club with kind of reaction to the club. Transfer news as well. We're going to have a lot of guests hopefully kind of coming on podcasts as well. So there's a lot to look forward to. 17th of July, that's when we start, and we're going to have daily content from there. So check it out. A lot of Rangers only content, so enjoy that when it comes. And thank you very much for having us on, and we really appreciate it.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on, Scott. Victoria, have you got any final thoughts for the guys in the live chatting out there?
I'm just so appreciative. Every time I look over, I see all these comments that are coming up. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time to spend your hour of a day with us, to meet Scott, to subscribe to his Rangers Twitter, his Rangers YouTube channel that's going to be coming up. So as you know, Rangers supporters support other Rangers supporters, and we want to see everybody succeed. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Owen, as always, I talk to you every day of my life pretty much, so it's always a pleasure. And Scott, you're welcome on anytime. It was such an honor to speak to you and hear more about your channel that's coming up.
Thank you very much. Very kind.
Thank you, guys, and thank you to everyone in the live chat. Like I said, like we always say here, we are a channel that is by the fans, for the fans, for you, to bring you your team every single day. And without you, we would be nothing, guys. It's all down to obviously having all you fans involved, building our family, building our Rangers family. Obviously, keep your eyes open and your ears to the ground for content as it comes out on the channel. Daily news videos, breaking news videos, etc. And obviously podcasts as well. Thank you so much to everyone who has been involved tonight. We will be back to speak to you again tomorrow. Well, will be